Just waiting for Brice, guys. Hope you've got your bottles ready. In 1 second. Okay, he's on.
Perfect.
Am I on the right, in the right position?
No. You need to do that. There we go.
No, on va pas y arriver. So fortunately, I have a cameraman with me.
Okay.
Hi.
She's a camera woman.
Hi.
That's my daughter.
Hi. Oh, hi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful.
Can you see me well?
Yes, yes. I hope it doesn't rain. There's a big black cloud right above your head.
Yeah. Well, you know. You can see me well. You can hear me well.
Very well, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
J'ai pas pris mes
let's
lunettes.
start. How are you?
Great,
Wonderful.
I'm fine. Perfect.
Good. Okay, so please tell us where you are, Brice.
Well, hello everyone. Hello, Paolo. We are at the moment at almost the top of the Chevalier. You can see just behind me the Chevalier Vineyard, and you can see the very lovely weather that we have, and we are keeping our fingers crossed for the rain. I hope there is not too much wind. We have a southerly wind at the moment, so I hope the conditions are good for you.
Okay, good.
Good. So maybe Paolo, maybe I should show a little bit further where I am at the moment.
Okay, please.
So behind me, and I need to. So here you see my village. That's Puligny. There are probably less people in the whole village than there is inhabitants in one building in Hong Kong. So that's how big it is.
Yeah.
So that's our village on the left here. So we're in fact going north. So we are going towards Meursault, and you can see that there is a nut tree somewhere. And on the left hand side you have Les Clavoyons, and then on the right hand side you have Les Villages. And there is another nut tree where below you have the Les Pucelles, and above you have Les Cailleraie. And then here we have all the Grand Crus, or almost all the Grand Crus, of Puligny and Chassagne at least. Here, Les Chevaliers. Then from the wall to the second wall, you have the beginning of the strip of the Montrachet. And then just afterwards, you have Bâtard. And then there is a small enclave of 3 hectares inside the Bâtard, which are the Bienvenue Bâtard Montrachet. And then if you go this way with me, then if you follow that strip of land, non, fais comme ça, voilà. That strip of land here, that's all the Chevalier, the Montrachet itself, and it goes up to Chassagne. There is a very very tiny house in the vineyard, and that tiny house is where the Montrachet of Domaine Leflaive is. So we are in the middle of the vineyard.
Fantastic. The Holy Land for white Burgundy.
Yeah, well, it's
Okay,
home.
great. Okay, thanks for the geography, but obviously we're here today to learn about Domaine Leflaive, so perhaps we'll ask you to talk about the history of the domain a little and also the stories behind before we go and talk more about the wines.
Good. Okay. In fact, I mean, I am the fourth generation of Leflaive at the helm of Domaine Leflaive. But in reality, the Leflaive family has been here since, well, in Beaune, there are some traces of Leflaive in the 16th century. But in reality, we arrived in Puligny in 1717. So in fact, we kind of celebrated the 300th anniversary of the family inside Puligny. At the time, it was not really a domain because the vineyard was mainly owned by the church. It became a domain in between 1910 and 1930, where my great grandfather, who was an industrial guy, he was born in Puligny, but then he was in industry south of Lyon. And somehow at the age of 40, he had a midlife crisis. And I think the family story does not exactly tell a lot of things about his midlife crisis, but there are some witnesses of the midlife crisis because he kind of started to buy land in Puligny, in his own village. And really, that's what he wanted, go back to his own village. And you have to remember that, I mean, the vineyard in 1910 was decimated by the phylloxera that happened until the very, very end of the 19th century. That's point number one. Point number two, they were the First World War that really was really somehow decimated also the village of Puligny. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he built very patiently his his estate, and the estate is more or less the way it is today. I know that Paolo, you have a map of the Domaine Leflaive in Puligny.
Yes.
There were a few additions, but it was more or less voilà. That's the one that you can see here. It's very very close to what my great grandfather kind of gave us as legacy. There are one or two things that I will mention in the history, but that's mainly what he gave us. And so his life was very long. He died in the 1952, and he had 4 children, and the 4 children kind of took over. But in those days, you know, you had 2 boys, 2 girls. The girls really had the right to say yes, and the boys said, "Okay, we're going to run the show." As you can imagine, you know, in the 50s and 60s, it might be a bit machist, but anyway, you know, they were two guys not only of goodwill but of hard work. These were difficult years, but the domain had a small reputation already. Because there were something very interesting. Is that I told you that it, you know, I don't know whether you hear a little bit of the
Yeah.
of the
No,
wind.
it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. Okay. So in fact, it had a little bit of a success because we had an importer just before the Second World War, between the end of Prohibition and the beginning of the Second World War. That was called Colonel Frederick Wildman, and he came to see my great grandfather, and he said, you know, rather than sell to the négoce, why don't you bottle the bottle yourself, and I will sell the bottles in the great restaurants of New York and etc. So Domaine Leflaive was already very relatively famous in those days, but in those days, you know, wine was not what it is today by far. and all the 50s and the 60s, these were the years of the replanting of the estates. And this was also another trend that happened more in France and in Europe, which was, it was the start of the very famous three Michelin star chefs. And along them, the pairing of food and wine became very important, and the estate really started to really take off in those years in terms of in terms of at least knowledge in the wine world. Then fast forwarding, beginning of the 1990s, in fact, that was the move from the second generation to the third generation. And the third generation, that was a woman that took the estate into custody, if I may say. And that was Anne-Claude Leflaive, who also saw and foresaw the fact that all those good years in the 50s, 60s, 70s, these were years of the magnificence of chemical treatment and mechanical treatment and etc. And we could see that, on our vines, especially in the Grand Cru, you could see that, the vines were not giving what they used to give. So we made, after a few years of trial, we made a big change. 1992, the Domaine Leflaive became completely organic. But and Claude thought, well, organic is fine, but we need to go one step even beyond, and we need to go biodynamic. And 1996, we converted after a lot of trials of many sorts and a lot of tastings. Actually, we decided that we're going to go organic. So 1996, fast forwarding to 2015, that was I'm going to fast forward to 2004. One big change in 2004 is that we kind of decided that, Chardonnay is so great in Puligny. We love it. I know you love it, Paolo, and I'm sure your viewers as well. But, feels a little bit like the center of our world, at least. But, there are some expressions of Chardonnays that can be also very, very nice. And we kind of looked here and there and kind of decided that only 100 kilometers from here, south, in the Mâconnais, there were some terroirs that were really unappreciated for their beauty and their interest. And then we decided we're going to buy some land. And we bought 9 hectares, and we bought after a few years some more. And now we are almost 25, 26 hectares in the Mâconnais, which I think is, are very interesting wines and very interesting terroirs. 2015, unfortunately, Anne-Claude died of cancer. And somehow, as a family, we kind of scratch our head and say, how are we going to handle the change? And there were discussions on how we wanted to do it, but there were something that we were, de facto in total agreement, is that we didn't want to sell the estates. But if you don't want to sell the estate, then that means that you have to, to run the estate as a family estate, and that's where we think that, the values of the family, the values of that heritage of the different generation, including biodynamics, is very important. And somehow, by an extraordinary turn of events, I became the managing partner, if I may say, of the Domaine. I have to say that I was not necessarily groomed to be the next generation at the Domaine. In fact, nobody really was groomed to be the next generation. So that's a small flaw in our family process. And then I became the managing partner within 1 weekend. And as you very well know, Paolo, I was living very close to where you are today because I was living on the peak.
Yeah.
and working in Hong Kong. So one weekend, I rang my wife and I said, "Well, in fact, I'm not going to come back home on Monday, but you need to come back whenever you can at the end of the school year." And that's how the fourth generation of Leflaive kind of started at the estate.
Fantastic. Guys, feel free to ask questions. Brice is here to answer any questions that you may have. But let me start with one. So when the domain started with the biodynamic farming in '96, were you one of the first mainly white wine producers to do that?
Well, there were a number of people that had started biodynamics. I mean, we all know Nicolas Joly in the Loire Valley. There were a few Burgundians like Emmanuel Giboulot or Didier Montchauvet in Nantou that already were on that path of biodynamics. But certainly, in terms of an estate with so many Grand Crus and maybe so well known already at the time, that was kind of very, I wouldn't say adventurous, but that was very daring.
Mm. And also on the Mâconnais, when you've started it in '04, was it straight into biodynamics and organic, of course?
Yeah, when we buy some land now, whether it's a small plot of land or whether it's a big plot of land, we always go through the conversion. I mean, we don't even think about it. There is a wealth of experience in terms of biodynamic practices and experience at Domaine Leflaive. So, I don't really care whether I'm buying something that has been farmed very chemical, etc. I mean, the vineyard behind me in the 60s and the 70s was like that. It was not even raisonné, as they say, reasoned farming. It was intensive chemical farming. But, I think and it's part of our pride to kind of change something that was in that practice into biodynamics, and frankly, it works immensely well for us, for the wines, for the expression, and also for the expressions of the terroirs. We think that it does enhance the expressions of the terroir. So yes, it works very well.
Okay. And the decision to hire Pierre Vincent, has it been started, the searching from Anne-Claude's time, or was it purely your decision?
That was purely my decision.
Okay.
In fact, the way Domaine Leflaive works, and for those of you that want to go on the site, the website of Domaine Leflaive, you see that we have a practice that I have to say I only realized very recently, that we team up with someone always. My great-grandfather, and you see the photo, teamed up with a guy called François Viraud. At the beginning of the 20th century, François Viraud was the kind of Henri Jayer of its time. Obviously, Henri Jayer's fame is so much beyond Burgundy, and at the time, the world was probably as big as Burgundy. But he was really very revered. Today you'll call it in English winemaker. We call them régisseurs, managing the estate on the day-to-day. But in reality, for most of us, at least for Anne-Claude and me, then it's kind of almost a 100% presence. But my great-grandfather and the generation after, they needed to work, because the estate was frankly producing zero money, and the idea was really to maintain it. And the second generation teamed up with the son of François Viraud, who was called Jean Viraud, who was the régisseur until 1988. So just a few years before Anne-Claude took over. And the third régisseur was Pierre Moret. And I think that, most people still today remember the tandem that Pierre Moret and Anne-Claude made for 20 years, 1988 to 2008. Then we had kind of a transition as a régisseur with Anne-Claude, a person called Eric Rémy, And when I arrived at the domain and I wanted to do a few things, and I thought that a few things needed to be done, I said to myself, with whom do I want to partner? I need someone that can, that has a little bit the same views that I have, that likes innovation, that likes to reappraise things. Obviously, I want the best winemaker possible, but I also want someone that is completely convinced about biodynamics. And I also want to be someone that, likes to explore new avenues. And in Pierre Vincent, I find, all three major qualities plus one, which is that he's a simply fantastically nice guy. And since January 2017, we've been teaming up, the two of us.
And I mean, these are very long-term relationships. You mentioned the régisseur and the owner. I mean, it's a big decision. How many people have you interviewed, and how long was that selection process?
We interviewed quite a few people. It's a search that I did myself, going to see a few people, tasting with them, and it really took between 12 to 18 months as a process. You need to. It's a two-way street. Any interview, any recruitment is a two-way street. You need to like the person. The person needs to like you. They need to like the ideas that you have. You need to like their ideas. So yes, in a way, it's when you start, then it's for 20 years, 25 years, whatever, 30 years if life is long enough. So yes, it's in wine, and especially at Domaine Leflaive, in now 110 years, I'm only the fourth managing partner and the fifth régisseur. So I think that's somehow yes, that's the way that also translates a little bit part of the philosophy that we have at Domaine Leflaive, but that we have in Burgundy. I mean, it's very Burgundian, values here.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a question. How long do the terroirs adapt to the conversion of biodynamics?
Well, let's say the legal answer to the rules of biodynamics is, let's say that after 3 years, we consider that the conversion into biodynamic is probably 95% done. Now the reality is that these are 3 difficult years, because moving from one practice to the other, even if you have the experience of Domaine Leflaive, it requires a lot of adjustments. So my view is that it really shows into the wine in a major way between 7 to 10 years. For example, the Mâconnais we started in 2004, it really started to be really something quite different 2010, 2011, 2012. Obviously, these are small increments of evolution, but yeah, that's the reality of biodynamics. It takes time and patience.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's move to the wine, because we've got 3 wines to taste. Even though I really wanted to do the Mâconnais wines, as I mentioned to you earlier, we have sold out. So we have to start with the Bourgogne from the Domaine. It's we're tasting 3 2017s today. So tell us a little bit about this wine, please. Are you using Zalto?
Yes, I am.
Nice. So the location, how many different plots? I'm sure the viewers would like to know.
Well, can you bring the map of the estate back, if you please? So you see that there are some gray areas on the left-hand side where you have Les Houillères, Les Parties, and then there is kind of an arrow at the bottom that says La Plante des Champs. And actually, I'm going to show you where it is. If I don't have my glasses, but non, il faut que tu fasses comme ça. Voilà, parfait, génial. So these are the vineyards that you see over there. I wouldn't say on the horizon, but just before the line of trees that are here. Voilà, my hand is better like that. So you have Les Parties, you have Les Houillères that is closer to the village, and if you somehow can see a few cars on the road that is 3 kilometers, there is a car going, or there is a truck. Maybe you can see the truck better somewhere here. Anyway,
not really.
never mind. And then on the other side is La Plante des Champs. So the Bourgogne Blanc of Domaine Leflaive, sometimes there is one guy that, thought that, we had the secret that maybe there were some Grand Cru Montrachet in the Bourgogne Blanc. Obviously, I'm putting some Montrachet because it's going to enhance my my Bourgogne Blanc. No, it's a fallacy. Obviously, there is no Montrachet or Chevalier in the Bourgogne Blanc, but there is a small. It's not a trick, but there is more secret. Is that all the Bourgogne Blanc of the Domaine Leflaive comes from Puligny. And the Bourgogne Blanc coming from Puligny is frankly worked, farmed, vinified in exactly the same way. We don't bring more attention. Maybe it would surprise you, but we don't bring more attention to the Chevalier than to the Bourgogne Blanc or the parts that are classified as Bourgogne Blanc. It may surprise you, but again, that's a little bit maybe a bit the Burgundian, a bit the Domaine Leflaive. I think every wine needs its chance. Okay, it's very clear that you can see actually here that it's at the bottom of the slope, so it's really flat. There is more clay, so in fact, in terms of soil, you'd rather have that kind of soil and slope where here you see nicely the slope. You can see that actually, well, trust me, but it's a lot more limestone, so the vines are struggling more and etc. So in terms of location, terroir, this is a fantastic place, but the rest is really done the same. All the attention of Domaine Leflaive is really the same. Merci.
And what about the age of the vines for the Bourgogne vineyards?
Same average. It was really replanted a little bit in the mid-50s to mainly the mid-70s. Okay, as always in French, there is an exception to a very nice rule. But that gives you an idea. The average age of the vines everywhere at Domaine Leflaive is about 45 years. It's very rare that we have replanting. I think that the second generation, or at least the last part of the second generation, did a fantastic job. The third generation didn't have to do a lot of replanting. And as the fourth generation, I'm still relying on the same work. I've done one small replanting in the Bâtard. Well, I can see it from here, but the screen is going to be a bit too small. So it's old vines, and old vines, obviously, that provides really a fantastic wine.
Okay, so this piece is also bought by your great grandfather.
Yeah, everything. There is only one exception to that great grandfather rule, is actually the Montrachet that is just here. And I'm going to try. I don't have my glasses, so I can't really direct you very precisely. But here, about 500 meters from here, there is Le Montrachet. And Le Montrachet, we bought it in 1991, and we bought it after a lot of discussions in the family, thinking, it's such an outrageous price. It's too expensive, and etc. And if I told you the price here, it would be, today it would be a big bargain. But and in fact, we bought it because, and that gives you the spirit of the partnership. We really bought it because it was really outrageous as a price, and it's only 800 square meters, so it only makes one barrel. We bought it because Pierre Moret had been working the Montrachet of Les Comtes Lafon. And somehow we said, well, if Pierre Moret was doing a fantastic job for Les Comtes Lafon, he's going to know how to treat well this gem or at least, in terms of price, it was considered as a gem. But in reality, in terms of wine, it became really a gem, at least in our opinion. So that's really the story of Le Morachet. The rest was, there were one or two exchanges here in the Folatier, etc. But basically, what you see is what my great-grandfather gave us.
Okay, fantastic. So, what about the 17 vintage? Say something about the 17 vintage, please.
The 17 vintage. It's a little bit I should say that it's really my preferred vintage, and no, it has everything that I like in a vintage, and as you know, Paolo, because we had a lot of interactions. When I think that vintage is average, I don't hesitate to say that this vintage is average. No, 17 is really good, delicate, rather low in alcohol, really well balanced in terms of all the acidities, the minerality. It's not too strong. It's not too showy. It's simply elegant. From the Bourgogne Blanc up to the Morachet. Okay, everyone with their different personalities, and that's what we like with wine in Puligny, is that we are within 1 square kilometer, and then you have all those different expressions of wine. So 17 for me is the year, at least in my heart. It's a rather hot year, actually. This was one of our August harvests, which is normally very rare. I mean, if you think about the harvest date, my great-grandfather harvested between September and October. The second generation harvested in September, once or twice in October, but not immensely in October. And Claude harvested mainly in September, with two exceptions, 2003 and 2011. So in 20-ish years of Magic Barter, 2 times. This is going to be my 6th harvest, and 5 of them are August harvest. So whoever is skeptical about global warming, maybe that's one answer, or somehow there is someone that should be switching off the lamp a little bit, because.
How did you retain that acidity? I mean, the 17 is just so good. I really like the profile of this wine.
Me too.
You said it was a very hot year, right?
It was a really hot year, and this year 2020 is going to be a hot year as well. I think we are learning, and we're learning fast. I mean, there is a lot that you need to do, obviously, in the vineyard, and you have to do it throughout the season. But really, canopy management is really one of the key elements of making sure that you create shade, number one, and also that you create a little bit of the conditions of a slight move in the air. Because in Puligny, although today there is a bit of wind, during the height of the summer, it's not very windy, and therefore there is no cooling effect of the wind. So there is a lot of canopy management that are happening at that time. Then the very important decision is really to get the date of the harvest right. And especially when you're harvesting when it's really hot outside, it means that the maturity of the vines will change within 24 or 48 hours. And therefore you need to shorten the time at which you're doing the harvest. And with Pierre Vincent, we're working a lot on the way we can shorten this. We can harvest as quickly as we can, because when a vineyard is ready, it's today. It's not tomorrow, and certainly not the day after, because then it will get fat and wide and with no verticality into it. In fact, done in 2018, I think that everyone knows that in terms of yield, it was a very plentiful year, although we did massive green harvest, which we never ever do. We did a massive green harvest, but then with Pierre we decided there is a small place in La Clavoyant. We're going to take 2 ouvrays that make 2 barrels, roughly. And we are going to let the vine grow another week. And then you can see you can see the difference between, having it right or being wrong by 1 week. And being wrong by 1 week, it can be very, very quick, either because you're not careful enough or because you have, logistics issues. Domaine Leflaive, we have 120 people working for the harvest, whereas in normal we are 20, 23 here. And we are 100 in the Mâconnais. So we are about 230 people altogether in those just few days. So in Mâconnais it takes a little bit more time. But here we're striving to make it 4, max 5 days of harvest. So that's what makes those 17s, and actually the 18s. I was very concerned about the 18s because, after one of the best vintages ever, in my opinion. I mean, if you want to really take comparison of 17, you've got to think about 14. You've got to think about maybe 2005, and so it does not happen that often. I mean, it's every 10 years or so. Although 14 and 17 are relatively close to one another, and I was a bit concerned about 18. And actually, it turns out to be really nice. I mean, not the elegance. I mean, I don't know. For wine, you can see that as being horizontal. So that would be the structure, that would be the strength, that would be the presence, that would be also the texture a little bit. And then you would have something more vertical in the acidity, the minerality, the salinity, the length in the mouth, and I see a fantastic balance in 17.
Would you add 2010 into that top vintage range?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. In the top 4, 2010 would have a nice place without any order, but yeah, 2010 certainly.
I mean, it's delivering such great pleasure already. I mean, I'm sure this will go on for a long time. I mean, would you advise the viewers to drink this now? Pop the bottle?
Recork your bottle now and put your bottle into your cellar. That's my advice.
But, we also advise people, because, we're drinking a few bottles. We're trying a few wines. So sometimes we use this Correvin.
Yeah.
And it works sometimes.
No, it does work actually. Two questions in a way, or two comments. The first comment is obviously recorking is not going to be a very good proposition, but I know Paolo, and I know in Asia in general and in Hong Kong that you like your wines a little bit too young. And in a way, we are doing wines for their youth, for their mid-age, and also for their very, very long aging. But my recommendation is try, especially 17, the vintages like that. Try to hide them somewhere in your cellar and forget a little bit about them, and take other vintages. I mean, take 15, 12, 11. I mean, no problem. Because, they need to age. I mean, that's where they express a lot of their beauties. You have as we generally say, primary aromas, varietal, secondary aromas for everything that we do in the cellar. But if you take the wines too young, then you will lose those tertiary aromas, that evolution. You want evolution in wine. So it's really a strong message to all the viewers about drinking wines. Now, it's always interesting to comment on the most recent vintages, so I will not object to. In fact, I've opened the bottle, and I will drink them with my family a bit later.
It's I think it's interesting thing that is interesting point that people are drinking their whites quite young. Part of the problem was that there was a period including your domain, which you have admitted, where we had some, premature oxidation problem. So that's why people are drinking them young to ensure that they can at least enjoy them while they are nice to drink. So with the 17, we feel like the wine is perfect. We love it. We find obviously the effort that you've put into the vineyard and everything is working. And then you also added the Diam cork. You think you have completely escaped the problem, or are we nearly there?
Yes, I do. And as you know, I'm really relaxed to talk about Premox. Now, and I will in 2 minutes. Now, I think that there is more than only the Premox in drinking the wines too early. There is, obviously we are all impatient and etc. That's the wines that are available and etc. But there is also sometimes a cultural element. I've been brought in wines that are a bit older, and I've been brought into the appreciation of those tertiary aromas. Now, I'm not going to shy away from the Premox issues. It happened to Domaine Leflaive, it happened to a lot of other estates. And coming, from the family Leflaive, but coming from a different, let's say, background on a professional level, yes, I decided to tackle the problem and to say, okay, well, if there is a problem in Burgundy, in Domaine Leflaive, wherever, let's see what science is available. Then let's see what kind of practices are made in order to avoid premature oxidation. And it's work in the vineyard and it's work in the cellar. But it's true that also there is a last element. It's the bottle. So it actually there are some school of thought that says that the bottle could have been a factor in Premox, but there is very clearly also the question in the cork. And we've all experienced, Domaine Leflaive. What do you have here? You have a Puligny-Montrachet village,
17,
and
yeah.
same year and etc. And at least huge variation, or even a completely dead bottle and a completely magnificent bottle. And in fact, my wake up call was very early when I came at Domaine Leflaive, because they are numbered. You see that there is a number at the bottom of each bottle. So in the bottling process, they get their number, and therefore, one day I drank a wine that one was a good bottle, one was an oxidized bottle, and they were one number apart. So it means that somehow in the bottling process they were 75 centiliters apart. So you can tell me whatever you want about doing good things in the vineyard, doing good things in the cellar, and etc. That needs to be done, and I'm super detailed with Pierre on that. Now there is something else, and I went to Diams with the vintage 2014, because when I arrived, that was we were about to bottle that. And I have to say that ever since it's been magnificent. I mean, it's really been no issue whatsoever. So I'm very pleased with that.
Good. Okay, we only have 15 minutes left, and Instagram switches us off. So we must move on to the next two wines. Puligny-Montrachet. I'm going to show the vineyards again so that you can point out the different plots.
Good. So, Puligny-Montrachet, we call that a village. I don't know whether that expression is well known to you, but the village, well, maybe I'll use the map. The village are generally, the village wines, you assemble plots that are really immediately around the village itself. So these are the plots that are in green. You're not allowed to really claim it as a single vineyard. That's reserved for the Premier Cru and the Grand Cru. And sometimes people say Puligny-Montrachet and they just say, I don't know, les Norrois or les Enseigneurs, etc. We don't do that. I think that we like to respect the philosophy of Burgundy, where you have the Bourgogne Blanc, which can come from everywhere in Burgundy, but in the case of Domaine Leflaive, only from Puligny. Then you have the village, and the village, I mean, you can see behind me, you see the village itself, And then what you can see is that it's flattish, and then it's going to be, to take some altitude as it's coming towards us. And the village is really between the houses that you see here and the first row of the small path that you see. And on the map, I think it's probably better shown. So it's an assembly of those plots. I'm purposely not using blending, because blending would, although in English the right word would be blending, but because blending would, at least in my mind, would suggest that we are choosing whether the wine is worthy of being a village. That's not at all the philosophy of Burgundy. The philosophy of Burgundy, you have different levels, and you show the personality of the different levels. And honestly, obviously anything that is around the village, there is a slight slope. There is probably more limestone than there were in the Bourgogne Blanc. So that kind of equilibrium between verticality and horizontality, starts to be better aligned. And therefore, that's also, it's a nice expression that also are aging a little bit older than just the Mer Bourgogne Blanc.
Do you vinify them separately or together?
In fact, every plot that you see here is vinified separately. And sometimes even for the Clavoyon, you see the very, very big plot, we do 4 cuvées, because in fact, it's interesting, even within the personality of one person, depending of the time of the day and sometimes the time of the year, you can have different moods, if I may say. And here for terroirs, it's the same, and you can see the Chevalier, and I'm going to show you the Chevalier again. The Chevalier here at the bottom has a slope, and the Chevalier here at the top has a very, a much steeper slope. And here there is more limestone and than clay, and here there is kind of clay and limestone. And it's very interesting because when we taste separately the bottom part and the upper part, there is more vertical elements in the upper part and more horizontal elements in the parts below. And in fact, we've even cut a third plot that you can see on the left-hand side of the map, and that also has a slightly different personality. So, and what's the fun is that it's true for the village, but it's true also for the Bâtard, because we have 4 plots. It's true for Les Pucelles, because in fact it looks like 2 plots, but it's 3 in reality. It's those different slight expressions. When you bring them together, that's what makes it. The whole is so much more interesting than the components.
Okay, great. Someone asked about you want to talk about this wine before we move to the Clavoyon?
I don't know. The question is relating to this wine? Or?
No, it's not related to this wine.
Well, but since we are midway into our tasting, there is something that I would like to say. Since I'm a pragmatic guy, I did my plea for keeping the wines older, and I know that only 1 in a million are going to listen to me. So now I have my backup position. If you take young wines, if you take young white wines, young Burgundy wines, so I'm going to narrow that a little bit. And maybe let's narrow that to Domaine Leflaive, but it's true for other Burgundy wines. My view, and I know it can be slightly controversial, is that since the wine has been kind of bottled only a couple of years ago, in fact no, these were coupled in 19, so it's only a year-ish ago. They are in prison. Clearly a bottle is like a prison, and frankly the purpose of the diams is to lock it so that the aging is kind of constant and slow, because again my idea is that it needs to age for a long time. Then, when you, not that I know a lot about prison, obviously, but when you go out of, my daughter thinks I'm really a lousy comedian. Huh? No, but if you take those wines out of, kind of a concealed area, you've got to air. You need to bring a lot of oxygen. And my view is that don't hesitate to double decant it. And I don't know, you probably seen me swirl and swirl and swirl without drinking it because I want air. Wine needs air to express itself. That's point number one. And point number two, I had a very, very nice dinner yesterday with a wine collector, and we were discussing also temperature. And I know in Hong Kong, you like the wines a bit too fresh, and in fact, to the extent that there is condensation. Again, my opinion is that the wine should be 15 degrees and not 10 degrees, and even 13 degrees, which is the temperature of the cellars at Domaine Leflaive. I think it's good to keep wine. It's not good to taste wine. So yes, allow a little bit of temperature, because then, kind of the aromas, they will bring a lot of expression. Then you see the complexity. So, when you take a 17 like that, which is in its very, very young age, if you want to appreciate it, open it 3, 4 hours, 5 hours in advance, if possible. Double decant it in addition to, and again, for reds, my advice would be slightly different. So my advice is really for whites, and let the temperature rise. I don't care what your friends are saying. That's the really to enjoy these kind of wines. That's the best. That's the best way.
Yeah, that's a problem, because we tend to drink our white wines too cold and the red wines too warm. So we're changing that bit by bit, the behavior of our consumers. So we've only got 5 more minutes. Clairvoyant, a few words on the Clairvoyant, please.
Okay. So,
which is the largest part of the domain in terms of one vineyard?
It's the largest part of the domain. It's 4.8 hectares, and you can see that on the map that you're displaying, Paolo.
And one big piece.
Actually, I'm going to try to be. Let's go to word Clairvoyant. Normally the Clairvoyant should be behind me. So that's great. That's super. So same thing. You need to swirl it here. I mean, I have to say that I take pleasure first with the nose. Again, there are different schools of thought. There is a school of thought that says that you should kind of taste it in the mouth and then with the nose. But for me, the olfactive part of the tasting process, brings me a lot of satisfaction. And you can see, I mean, I don't know. I hope that your viewers have been able to have the 3 wines in a row. Wow! I mean, here you see that there is a step up. Huh? It's you don't have to taste it to know that it's more plentiful. So the Clairvoyant here, it's interesting because it's a terroir with a lot of clay. So much so that before the First World War, this was a tête de cuvée, which is, let's say, the equivalent of a Grand Cru of their time. And it was the tête de cuvée in Pinot Noir. So that gives you a little bit the idea of what kind of terroir is present in Les Clairvoyants. And the good thing is that we have a very large part of the Clairvoyant. It's always been, this premier cru with strength. In my youth, it was considered as a barely premier cru, probably. By the second generation, and I think that it's one of the 2 vineyards that, in my opinion, changed completely in the 20 years or 20 odd years of biodynamics. And it relates back to the question of one of your viewers saying, when does the biodynamic really kicks in? I would date back the change in the Clairvoyant towards something very elegant, very nice, very subtle, probably around 1910. So that means 14 years from 1996. And again, it's not, in 9 it was really, the old style, and in 11 it's completely the brilliant new style. No, obviously every year it's a small increment, but it's been at least in my memory, it's been now a decade. When I arrived at Domaine Leflaive, in 15, then I knew already that the Clairvoyant had changed, a lot more delicate. I mean, when you drink it, it's when you drink it, generally it's very delicate on the palate. I mean, if again you take horizontality and verticality, there is equilibrium. Whereas in the past, and if you see in the books, inside Burgundy from Jasper Morris and etc., they would tell you that it's a bit more fatty and etc. I think that it's a lot more elegant than it used to be.
Yeah. Great. Well, we're really closing to the hour. So, Brice, thank you so much. We've got a lot of interesting facts about Domaine Leflaive, and also we got to know much more about these 3 wines and the family and etc. So, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you. We hope you come back to see us soon, or maybe I'll get to come back to Burgundy soon, because it's been quite a few months since I've last visited. But thank you, and I wish you a great summer as well as a great harvest of 2020.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Paolo. Thanks to all your viewers. Look forward to seeing you in Hong Kong.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.